First, I want to give a shout out to Panchico for their new album, Ginkgo, the mysterious band that stopped being so mysterious in 2016, has now been active in recent years despite having been formed in 1997, giving us their second album this year, which, to be honest, went a bit under the radar despite having a big audience at this point. Most of the songs on this collection stuck with me from the first listen, to be honest, even though it might become a little monotone as the album goes on. Even though this might not feel as innovative and life-changing as death metal, their EP demo that made them famous, this one's got its stuff. There's subtle experimentation with textures going on in many of these tracks. That's evident in, for instance, my favorite track, Honeycomb, a very sweet track that feels like a bittersweet love song, like many songs here. Another song with plenty of texture and a very distorted and stimulating one is Chapel of Salt, which has an energetic chorus that makes me want to keep living. Another standout is Shandy in the Graveyard, which features no other than Billy Woods, resulting phenomenally because yes, this song is kind of a phenomenon, just good and unexpected chemistry. Some of the songs here I think have an ending that's too sudden though, such as Shalt and Cooked, or maybe they feel a little incomplete overall, like I just can't help but think that a couple of these songs maybe need an additional verse or a guitar solo or something just to make the song structure a little more interesting and less monotone, but sorry, I just can't help but think that, man. Next I want to mention Revenge Seekers by Jane Remover, an album that's loud no matter at what volume you play it, so you might want to be cautious with this one if you have sensitive ears. It's just so loud and distorted but so clean at the same time, letting her vocal delivery shine through the chaos. During my first listen I felt like all the songs were the same, just equally as fried and incomprehensible, but the more you listen to it and get accustomed to the noisiness, you catch more elements, making notice of the very poppy hooks earworm effect in your brain. This happened to me with the Money Store, I remember, which gave me a literal headache on my first listen. This album ends up being very, very, very stimulating, not letting you breathe for a moment, as there are video game sound effects thrown everywhere, which Jane has always loved to do. Even though I've become more familiar with the album the more I've listened to it, I think there are still some moments where the music meanders with no clear direction, though that's just me nitpicking again. I think this marks Jane Remover's career peak so far. This has been a great year for her, having released also their more pop-oriented Hard EP, which I loved as well. And I think Revenge Seekers places her as one of the most interesting and influential Gen Z producers nowadays, although this had been seen already years ago with Frailty and Census Designated. Standouts in the track list for me are Dancing with Your Eyes Closed, Professional Vengeance, and Psycho Boost, which has a killer feature from Danny Brown. Someone in the same circle as Jane is Codex, who is also one of the most exciting summer producers to come out in the last years. The artistic growth of this man has been scary. He's evolving too fast. These guys are no underground though. At this point, the man literally dissed KSI and it blew up years ago. Quad released Vanisher Horizon Scraper, a concept album that is about a lone sailor who, in search of meaning, in an obsessive move, sails towards the horizon, trying to reach it, confronting his feelings and weaknesses depending on how the sea reacts. The man tries to scrape the horizon, then vanishes, hence the name. I love it. I'm a sucker for concept albums, It is reflected in how the album sounds, having sounds of the sea itself, orchestral swells, ambient folk, but also experimental hip-hop and rock, going through both peaceful and chaotic passages representing the variable conditions of the sea. It is insane how skilled Ben is to borrow from so many genres so prolifically. Again, this dude scares me. There's, for example, the final song, an insane and strong ending for the album in which apparently the boat crashes and we hear the audio muffling repeatedly, representing how the protagonist battles against drowning, which is insane. There's also the song where he confronts a sea lion. There's also the song where he confronts a sea dragon, the Bakunawa, which actually raps. Yes, that dragon raps. Danny Brown impersonates the dragon on this one. Danny's appearing everywhere, I swear. And he was also featured in the 2022 Ghost Concept Codex album, where he also plays a character which is carbon monoxide. I just feel like I needed to mention that. So yeah, it's insane. There has been some controversy with this album on the nest of vipers that Twitter is. Some people calling it overproduced, soulless, that it shows too much skill but lacks substance, and I just can't understand it. I mean, you can hear the intention with this project. You can see the well thought concept, you can see the attention to detail. How could you call this soulless? Maybe there are a couple corny lines here and there, maybe some parts drag on through, but you can't deny that this album is an ambitious and impressive project from Ben. Also, this was for Christmas, this video is just coming late. Next, I want to mention Los Tutanaka's self-titled LP. This right here rewired the brains of many gringos. This is a psychedelic rock Latin electronics record by Bolivian-American duo Chukimamani Condori, also known as Elisa Crampton and Joshua Chukimia Crampton. I'm a Peruvian myself, and I have been exposed to these Andean sounds since my childhood, so seeing them reinterpreted in this abrasive way is very refreshing. These siblings had been working separately for more than 10 years. Of course, they had projects together as well, and it is cool to see that they have blown up this year after having been making crazy deconstructed fusions of Latin music with electronics for so long. I mean, yeah, you can call this experimental if you want, as it is a term that is given to music that sounds alien and that is mind-bending, which are good descriptors for this one. People describe this as falling asleep at a party in the Andes while you are on an ayahuasca trip, or at least suffering from the sequels of it, or something along those lines. This is hypnotizing, yes, but in other words, we could also say it's a bit repetitive, and I think that's why there are people who just don't feel it and feel like it drags on. And yes, I understand. I understand that. I think there were even more passages and variations in tracks that could have been explored, you know. However, that was not necessarily the intention of the Crampton siblings here. At the end, I think it is about running with the flow and again letting it hypnotize you and slowly consume you. And I'm just in love with the concept and the innovation here, so I felt like I had to mention it. I would highly suggest checking out Elisa Crampton's project as well. Amor de Encaba de Week 420. Here's another Latin electronics record. This time it is Venezuelan collective with 420 with their concept album Amor de Encaba. It is a plunderphonics record that relies on samples of reggaeton and salsa, distorting them, accompanying it with also distorted electric guitars, throwing sound effects and glitches here and there, making for a psychedelic experience that I really enjoyed this year. And the truth is that the noisy landscapes created here are mesmerizing. I love the nostalgic concept as well of being in one of these Venezuelan buses called Encabas, listening to the driver's DJ mix of urban Latin music, but for some reason it sounds distorted and blurry, just like memory. The standout here I think is Maluca, where, as in the rest of the project, vocal samples and instrumentals bleed into each other beautifully, including, for example, vocals of Daddy Yankee. I would suggest listening to their latest DJ mixes, which follow a similar vibe. Very exciting new artists from Venezuela. Lastly, I want to mention Forever How Long by Black Country New Road, a band I'm a fan of since I got into their music in 2022, and their album Ends From Up There became one of my favorites of all time. In this new album, the ladies are taking the lead with their vocals. Some people say this is a feel-good album, and yes, there are happier songs here, and the album cover is a happy little guy. There are good songs I know, such as Besties, Salem Sisters, Happy Birthday, Goodbye, but There are definitely darker ones. Take, for instance, Nancy Tries to Take the Night, or Mary, which literally talks about a girl who's suffering from bullying at school. It has suicidal tendencies because of that. Yeah, very feel-good record. But also, Besties sounds happy, but here Georgia does not talk about the magic friendship necessarily. It is about how she's in love with her friend, but fears telling her since that would ruin the relationship. I'm loving the unique song structures in the album as well, and how the songs have so many sections, even though I know some people would have wanted a bit more repetition and hooks to make some songs catchier. To be honest, I was never a fan of how abrupt the tempo change is on the song Two Horses, which might be a little bit surprising being this the appeal of the song to so many people. On the other hand, though, I'm in love with the structure of the song For the Cold Country. That song's build up and chaotic climax are just insane, and that breakdown, man, it's insane. These are just well-crafted compositions all around. Those have been the albums that have stood out to me this year, and my recommendations for you if you haven't listened to them. Goodbye, take care, and check if the stove is leaking gas every night before you go to sleep, because, I mean, sorry if it is OCD inducing, but it's necessary. Goodbye.